Hello everyone, I'm Himanshu Saxena. I founded Centro Strategic Mindset with a single purpose to groom strategic minds who can deliver bold business impact. I do that by three things. The first is creatively challenging the limits of the leaders. Second is stoking their ambition. And third, guiding them to achieve their big goals. As a thinker, writer, speaker, and coach, my job is clearly cut out. Get the best triggers from all around the world and give them the best tools to help them realize their goals. My source of triggers is my own journey and reflection from that, and also the authentic conversations from leaders who have traveled the similar journey of greatness and path of impact. One of my passion is to capture these authentic stories and package them into conversation which I call straight from the heart. In today's episode, we have someone who has been extremely humble, unassuming, and went on to become or take the topmost position of biggest bank of India. He exudes charisma and uncanny humility. You know, his entire journey has started from somewhere and reached to a point where one thing stands out very clearly, that it does not matter where do you start from, it matters where you can land. Any guesses who I'm talking about? Yes, he is none other than Mr. O.P. Bhatt, Om Prakash Bhatt, the ex-chairman of State Bank of India, and he's our guest today for State of Heart conversation. Welcome to this conversation, Mr. Bhatt.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for taking out time for this wonderful conversation.
My pleasure.
Let me start this conversation with a question that you have come a long way from Bhatgaon village in Uttarakhand to occupy that prestigious position in Worli, the chairman of the Bank of State Bank of India. So how does this journey look like in hindsight? How do you feel about that?
Well, it's been a long journey, fairly long journey. I feel good about it. I really feel good about it because my beginnings were quite humble, as most of India was at that time when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s. I come from a middle class family, maybe at the lower end of the middle class, not even at the middle end of the middle class.
Yeah.
And though I went to a good school and college, etc., but the aspiration at that time was, and that was true of maybe 99% of the Indian youth at that time, to get a job, right?
Yes.
So there used to be employment exchanges and things like that, where even I had registered, right? But it so happened that, I did get an entry into the State Bank of India as a probationary officer. And after that, it's been more like a conveyor belt syndrome. You get onto the belt and then you go on and on and on and on.
So are you trying to say that you just landed at the right conveyor belt and the belt took you? Or what did you do to make the belt flow forward?
Yeah. So conveyor belt is not an inapt simile actually, because there is a lot that happens because you are on that belt. There are certain things which are predetermined, when you are eligible for your next promotion or for your next posting, things like that, right? But then again, of course, everybody doesn't make it, so that is right. So if I were to look at the early part of my career, it is, simple things which most of us have been taught by parents, by teachers, by even neighbors and elders, at least at that point of time, again, growing in the 50s and 60s, just to do the right thing, to be honest, to be hardworking, to be sincere, to do your role to perfection. In fact, this was something which used to be drilled again and again, that you must do things well. You must, put in your best. Very, very simple precepts, very, very simple teachings, but to be universally applicable to everything that you do. So this sort of gets ingrained in you, right? You don't even think about it. It's your
Yeah.
second nature. It just happens automatically. So at the lower ladder of the bank, where you entered as a probationary officer, things may be new, but they are not difficult, right? You may have to learn,
Yeah.
but it is neither difficult to learn nor difficult to perform. What may be difficult is depending upon your mindset, how much commitment you give to it, how earnestly you do it, how well you do it, whether you do it all or not, things like that, which I think is not difficult.
Who are your early influencers who kind of made a significant contribution to your thought process and actions thereafter?
So, in terms of great personalities or people, it is difficult to name someone. You know, I used to read a lot, and maybe my heroes were the same as the heroes of many other people at that point of time. So whether it is Tagore or Mahatma Gandhi or Swami Vivekananda or but in terms of people whom I went out with and was influenced, I would say that to a large extent it was a group of people that I used to hang out with in college. So at that time, a youngster, and this I'm talking about late 60s, early 70s, a youngster was more than not likely to be left-leaning, liking poetry, Hindi film songs, and a little romantic, willing to enter into a discussion and debate on anything and everything, trying to solve every problem that there was in the world. So if Kennedy could not solve it, we could solve it. If Jawaharlal Nehru could not solve it, we could solve it, right? There was nothing that we could not do in discussion, right?
Only thing we
In
didn't have
debate.
the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So some of it came later. So I think, those were some of the best times of my life, no doubt about it, best times of my life. And even though those moments were spent with great passion, also, I would like to use the word great commitment, though, there was nothing to do. I mean, you are not a role occupier or anything, but you fervently and passionately believed in what you were saying, and, that is the right way, this should be done or not done or whatever it is. So I think in some way it shaped your thinking, it shaped your character. It also shaped some of your skills, whether it is about thinking, whether it is about debating, whether it is about, making a point, persuasion, negotiation, whatever it is. So I think some of those things happen in those moments of sheer joy.
Yeah, I think the best expression of character comes in sheer joy.
Yeah.
And those days, we were adept in finding joy when nothing existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite instrumental.
Yeah.
So, how did this journey really begin? Tell us something about your childhood, adult, and professional journey thereafter.
So childhood, don't really remember any outstanding incident. Usual things, playing with friends in the neighborhood, having little small fights or altercations or small pleasures. Not Nothing outstanding comes to mind. It was routine childhood, peppered with the usual pleasures and sorrows, if I can use the word sorrow. When a child is unhappy, he or she is really deeply unhappy. At that moment, this is the most unhappy person in the whole world. 2 minutes later, the person is sparkling with joy, right?
Yeah.
So all those things, but it was by and large a happy and a contented childhood. I had my parents, I had my uncles and aunts, I had a neighborhood, I had a school to go to. Nothing outstanding, but we would play all kinds of silly games. It was a good childhood in almost every way.
Okay. And what are your reflections about your adulthood and the professional journey?
So adulthood, as I mentioned, it was hanging around with friends, and though we would do many other things like going on picnics or playing games or But the most choice part was conversation, debates, discussions, uh, fighting with points of views or fighting with opinions, things like that. That was the most satisfying part of my college years, right? Hanging around and just doing these things. In my career, I entered the bank almost by accident. I didn't even know that there was such a role available as that of a probationary officer in State Bank of India.
I think 80s it had started, or late 70s or early
No, it had started, I think, in the 60s because
60s.
I
Okay.
joined the bank in 1972. And when I was in school, I had got this National Science Talent Search Scholarship in
Okay.
physics. I think that was the first batch, and as you know, it's a very premium scholarship. Very few people get it, and it's like the President's Scholar in the U.S. and things like that. And this was in science, and I was going to major in physics or do my MSc in physics. But it's a slightly longer story. I do not know how much time we have. I gave up my MSc physics after the first year because I was not very happy with the class or with the professors. Somehow it was not what I thought it would be. And I gave up everything and came back to Dehradun because for this I had to go outside Dehradun, which is my hometown where I was brought up, because this scholarship said that, if you have to study so-and-so subject, then you can study in so-and-so university or so-and-so
College
college.
and
You just couldn't
universities.
go anywhere,
Yeah.
right? So for physics, I had to go outside. So when I came back, I had lost my scholarship. And at that time, it was a princely sum of 250 rupees, which I used to get, which was salaries of most people at
Yeah,
that
it's
time,
quite a
right?
big amount.
It was a very big amount, and there were many perks that used to go with it. Free tuition. There used to be an annual camp of 1 month. So we went to IIT Mumbai 1 year. We went to BHU 1 year and spent the whole month in the physics lab doing all kinds of crazy things. It was quite an interesting thing. So there was a lot of pride around me in the family that this guy has got this scholarship and he's going to become a scientist or this, that, and my career had been decided by my family and
Others.
friends. Everybody had decided, and then I left everything and came back. So this was some kind of completely unexpected from a person like me. That you just give up everything and come back. And there was a kind of gloom that descended in my house. I was the eldest son, right?
A lot
And
of
my
hopes and expectations
lot of
pinned on
hopes,
you.
expectations. Plus, my father was also a serviceman, so he had joined as a surveyor, and then moved his way up to become a gazetted officer and things like that. And he put me to an English medium school, which was the best in Dehradun. I'm sure it was some effort on the family budget otherwise to put me through that school, right? So most Indian middle class parents make that sacrifice.
Yeah.
They will cut down on their lifestyle merely so that their children can go to a better school and have a better chance in life, which is what my father also did. So when I came back, it was completely unexpected and it had demolished the dreams that they had about their child. So I also came back without any plans, and what to do. So since I couldn't be staying at home, I had to join college. And at that moment, what I thought was that, so obviously it has to be an MA, can't be an MSc. So, and in MA, then which subject then? For a variety of reasons, I thought that English literature was the best subject. You don't have to do a BA in English literature to be
To
able to
do
do
M
an
in
MA.
English. Yeah.
Most other subjects, maybe you need that grounding. Here, you did not need. In any case, as I said to myself that I'm going to write the IS examination. So, it doesn't matter what subject you choose as long as you get your MA and use that time to prepare. So I had joined MA English Literature in Dehradun, which was at that time under Meerut University. And in my mind, I was preparing myself for the IS examinations. And in the house, at least my father was not talking to me. My mother was, because he thought, bigad gaya ladka.
He's out of grip now.
So we had a semester system in the university. So when the first semester the results came for MA English Literature, I had topped the university. In fact, I had got first division marks, which is very rare in English literature. If you get 50, 55, because that was the kind of grading standard which we had in India. You know, there are subjects where you don't get more than 60,
Yeah.
65. And nowadays, everybody gets 99%.
It's
That time,
quite
if you get,
surprising, actually.
yeah, that time if you get 62, 65%, it was a huge thing.
Yeah.
But I topped the university. You know, so I learned later on that that day my father had distributed some sweets to his colleagues in the office, and he started talking to me. You know,
The
things
son is
became,
back on track.
yeah, so things became well at home. So while on this journey, trying to do MA and trying to prepare for the IS, one of my friends in college, he was doing something else. He was doing science, I was doing English. He came to me with the State Bank of India probationary officer's application form, saying that we should write this. I said, what is this and why should we write it? So he said, no, no, State Bank's form. And, you know, so I said, but we are going to write the IS now, so why should we write this? He said, no, IS we can write only next year because the minimum age was 21.
Yeah.
State Bank, the minimum age was 20. He says we can write it this year, so you know we can practice a little bit for a competitive examination. That was the logic. I fell for the logic and wrote the exam. I qualified and he didn't. I still didn't want to join the bank because my heart was set on the IS. You know how the IS, at that time, the aura of the IS was that, you know, there is nothing in the world which is better than the IS. Right? Every family was egging on their children to go and write this examination. People used to spend time in university 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years just preparing to write this exam. So partly because that was the aura around the IS, partly because there were hardly any other opportunities in the Indian job. There were no opportunities.
Private sector had not opened by then
Private sector not open. Public sector was also not what it is today. And so there were hardly any opportunities. So I still didn't want to join because I thought, you know, this is good, I made it, that means I'll make it there also. So my family had a war conference in which I was scolded and made to
join
the State Bank. So it is almost by accident that I joined the bank.
Were they influenced by your previous incident that wahan jaake he got back? So if we don't push him again, he may be back, something like that.
Maybe not. Maybe not. The reason was that, you know, the IS Academy was in Mussoorie, which was next door to Dehradun.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a fair lot of information available. So, for example, my first salary was more than 1.5 times what the IS people were getting.
Would get that those days.
And at that time in India, there were, in every district, there were 3 important positions. The district collector, the district superintendent of police, and agent State Bank of India.
Yeah.
So in any district club across the country, and there were hundreds of them, these were the 3 most important people, right? So maybe they thought that, you know, this is as good as it gets.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah. So in any case, maybe a bird in hand is better than 2 in the bush. So
yeah.
So
thank you for taking me through this long reflection journey. I'm just curious to know how some of these experiences came handy for you when you started your journey in bank and started leading small level, next level, big level, and eventually at the chairman's level.
So I don't think there were any earth-shaking differences or earth-shaking, you know, learnings, you know, that you're going from this stage to another, say you're officer to branch manager to regional manager or whatever it is. Most of it was incremental.
Okay.
Most of it was gradual, you know, and I think it happens to most people. I don't think there was any sudden spurt in my abilities or in my investment in myself, or any spurt in the challenge that you face in a new or a different assignment. So definitely there were more challenges or more effort required, or your role requirements, role definition completely changes. So that would happen from time to time. But I would still think, A, it was incremental. B, there were hardly any surprises because you know what is going to happen.
What is coming up.
So you know that if you get promoted and if you get this role, that role, that role. So by and large, you have an idea. You know people who are in those role occupants because they may be, you know, half an inch senior to or 1 inch senior to you. So in that sense, I don't think there were any big surprises there. But if you have to compare when you are as a probationer and when you are as a chairman, completely different. You know, when there is too much of incremental change, it can become a qualitative change. It's like you heat ice and it becomes water. So ice and water are sort of 2 different things, right? So in that sense, over a long period of time, you could say that there were changes, incremental, it becomes corridor, banat banjai, something like that. But if you were to ask in each stage or each step, I don't think there were something.
Yeah, see, in hindsight, it looks like there are many small increments led to a big wave of transformation. But at each stage, you must have found yourself handling a slightly bigger scale, greater scope, more complexity. So, when this was happening to you, what was your way of dealing with bigger scale, greater scope, and more complexity?
So you have to draw your own influences. But just to tell you another
Yeah.
story is, when I was posted to London for 3 years as in the London branch. It's known as, the role is known as India-based trainee officer. You are sent there to learn about how foreign offices function and about forex and trade credits, letters of all those things. It's also a way for the bank to send people out, who can be posted, trained, they come back. So when I came back from London, after 3 years in London, I was posted as branch manager in Dehradun.
Okay.
Right? Now, before that, as it happened, I had never been in a branch before. So my career graph was such that, I was absorbed first in the local head office. Then at that time, there was some lead bank scheme going on, if you remember. Banks, districts across the country were allocated to various banks. And the bank was known as the lead bank of the district, and it was the
Okay.
responsibility of that bank to develop that district in every way. So to prepare credit plans, 5-year plans, to divide them into blocks and to divide them into years, and to allocate resources and generally nudge the entire system to make that credit plan happen. It was a new scheme which had come up at that time, and this was, I think, 73, 74 that it started happening.
Yeah.
So because this was a new scheme, I got absorbed into it because two probationers were getting confirmed. I was one of those who got absorbed into this because the department heads were looking for talent or looking for people, I got absorbed into that. And maybe whatever I did there, I made some presentations at Astaf College in Hyderabad. When I came back, I found that I had been transferred to the corporate center to be part of the team which was overseeing this job across the country.
Okay.
So maybe something which I did or said there, the chief economic advisor and things they liked, and they put me up there. So when I came back, I found that I'm no longer there. I'm so different place, right? And from there, I got to London. So I never saw a branch except during my probationary period, which was the learning training period. I never worked in a branch, as a field officer or as an accountant, as a branch manager. So, and at that time, I used to hear, how difficult it is to work at a branch because the industry relations were not great.
Yeah.
There was fair bit of tension. Some of it created artificially, some of it created because of the mindset that people at that time have, me, they, I, you, and, kind of a
Usual
fanatical,
conflicts.
egoistical
Yeah.
mindset because you are the management or you are not the management, and therefore there is reason to oppose each other, right? So when I came back and they posted me straight away as branch manager because actually I was overdue to work in a branch and overdue to work as a branch manager if I were to get my next promotions. I knew nothing about the branch, but I knew all these problems because we used to hear stories and all that. So I was a little worried because you don't know about branch routine, branch practices, because everything is not laid down. Everything you don't learn in that first year of training or second year of training, right? 90% of the work you learn only when you're thrown into that. But as I said, most of the learning, when it is incremental, you don't even realize it. But when it is sudden, you never worked in a branch, or suddenly you have to go as a branch manager, then So when I went to Dehradun, there is a training center, staff training center of State Bank of India. I went to the training center and met the chief instructor there and told him who I was and what I have come there. I said, I know nothing about it, and I want some guidance from you. What is it that I should be doing, or to. And this gentleman, he laughed at me. He says, "Look, you are the only person that has come to me so far with this request. I mean, we have got hundreds or thousands of branch managers. Nobody
No
has
one
come
has
to me. Nobody.
shown that kind of curiosity.
You are the only person who has. I said, sir, I never been in a branch. This is my first assignment, and I don't want to mess it up. So I thought I'll ask you because you are the head of training. So the advice that he gave me was, piche dekhe aage chalo. There are precedents for everything. So you should find out what are the precedents go ahead. So, which wasn't much of an advice. But this is to your question that, what did I do? So I was concerned. In fact, I could even say that I was a little worried that, I'm straight away going as branch manager. And therefore, accountant's job, I mean, many of these things I really do not know. And now I'm supposed to be supervising all those people.
That also shows the degree of seriousness that you attach to this role.
Yeah.
Might as well find out how I'm going to cope up with that.
Yeah. So seriousness, yes, but at that time, it was not, leveled seriousness. So it was, also tinged with concern and anxiety, right, at that point of time. So that is how I came to the branch. And in the branch, actually, it was a very, very successful assignment that it became a star branch and things like that. It grew up by leaps and bounds, and a lot of good things happened after I took over that branch. It sort of really did very well. It became a model branch. So,
One of the things that I'm picking up from this piece of conversation is when you land in a situation, you're not afraid to admit that you don't know.
true.
And when you operate from that, oh, I don't know, and I can reach out to people and seek help, everybody contributes to your success.
Yeah. True. I think that's a good point, yeah. So that is true. And that has happened to me all along in life. Even when I was a chairman, I didn't know more than half the bank did because I'd never been posted there or worked there. So I would ask, or sometimes I found that I would get some officers to my house, junior officers who are actually doing this and to, teach me what it is, or at least to teach me enough so that I can take decisions on those things. I may never become an expert. So yeah, that's true. So
A lot has been written, talked, admired about the way you metamorphose SBI. And you got the bank into the bracket of Fortune 500 list. How did you go about this entire piece of transformation?
So, sometimes it is this circumstance which makes the man.
But
So,
man has to rise to the occasion.
yeah. So it was on both sides. On the bank side, I think for a variety of reasons, the bank had been slipping. It was losing market share. The quality of service was getting poor. We were alienating our customers. We didn't have a great reputation. We were still surviving, in fact, doing reasonably well because we were the largest bank in India. There were things which only we could do. We had a large number of very loyal customers who were banking with us, from their parents or grandparents' time. So there was a certain attachment to the bank for a variety of reasons. But in terms of being relevant to the then needs of the economy, the private sector banks and the foreign banks, they had stolen a march on State Bank of India, possibly in some of the public sector banks. So whether it was with technology, whether it was with new products, whether it was what the jargon then used was customer centricity, or whether it was simply the kind of branding and marketing that they did, because for them it was important to be seen to go ahead, to make a mark, because a fair bit of their incentivization depended on those things. So, for a variety of reasons, we sort of fell behind, and we kept on falling behind. And this happened over a period of years, right? Say 90s, just post-liberalization, 91, 92, the liberalization started in the Indian economy. Foreign banks started coming in, they started getting banking licenses. When they came with new products, new technology, new management style, young people, MBAs, all that kind of thing. And so this kept on happening for quite some time. So as this was happening in the bank, I was growing up in the bank from, say, general manager to chief general manager to DMD. Managing Director, State Bank of Travancore, before I came back to State Bank of India as MD and then Chairman. So when this was happening, people like me, because of what kind of people we were, we would talk about this, that
Why it is like that?
why is it like that, and why is this not being done, and why is this being done, and we could do this, but it goes back to my days in college.
I was coming to that only, where you had a point of view that we could fix the damn thing.
We could fix everything, right? Just that, And so here again, I mean, you will always find similar people everywhere in life, right? So when I was in my late teenage or early 20s in college, I found those kinds of people. You will find those kinds of people everywhere. As a professor, you find that group of people. As manager, it's, always, because that is who you are, and that is the kind of people you will attract or will gravitate to you. So at this time, during those 4 or 5 years, I was posted in the US. I came back from the US in 2003. And that is when some of the worst declines in State Bank of India's perception, public image, reputation, market share were happening. So these were the conversations that were taking place in some of my circles, and I was part of that conversation. So I was getting primed with these issues and getting concerned, just like I was when I was a teenager, college. And the bank was sort of going in that particular direction. And at that time, when they appointed the next chairman, through some quirk of circumstance, I was never in the running, and I never thought I would make it also, because there is a certain way in which these things are done, and in that sense, I didn't sort of, quote unquote, qualify to become the chairman. So it was a bit of a surprise that, I was chosen as the chairman at that point of time. So when I became chairman, I was sort of intellectually primed. Already primed that,
this is my moment.
Not my moment, but, there is so much that is wrong with the bank, and that there is so much that can be done to right it. Nobody is doing it. So that was a mindset with which I came, right? And the bank was sort of ready to receive, new wisdom. Thoughts. So that's what I said, circumstances makes the man. So you said the man must be ready. So maybe I was being also primed by circumstances again. And the bank was also going through a particular set of circumstances. And suddenly, it was sort of unexpectedly that I was anointed as the chairman, because I was the junior most. That's another story altogether.
No, what I meant by moment is throughout the time when you are witnessing certain things happening in a way, you have a point of view, oh, this should be done, that. So that actually primes you, and then you find yourself in a position where you say, okay, here I am. I have the wherewithal and an opportunity to make a difference. So that's where I meant by moment. What I'm picking up from this conversation is, many times I've seen leaders whining, cribbing, complaining about the setup that they are part of that. And my advice to them is that keep accumulating. Who knows? One day you may get a position to do that. That time you'll have all the plans in place that how do you go about it.
That is part of the hero's journey. This is actually preparing you, strengthening you, enabling you, building you into a different and a more capable person, actually. Depends on how you take it.
And my mission is that groom strategic minds. So strategic minds, there are two kinds of people. One who will witness and will only crib. Second is, okay, keep taking it, keep absorbing, and maybe when I have an opportunity, I can make a difference. So we build this conversation forward after a short break.